I've spoke a lot in the past on health and diet. My views have matured and evolved over the past few months, and I'd like to share them with you. So today I'm gonna do a holistic approach on my views in general on diet and health, and a few factors that I just wish to voice because I'm in the mood. So, where do I begin? You are what you eat. Everybody's heard this for a long time. And I'm going to approach this video as if I'm trying to educate the youth of what I wish I was told, somewhat. But it's quite more nuanced and less ideological than I used to be, as I realised recently, not clocked is like UK slang for realised, so I'm going to try and make my language a bit better over time as well. But I realised that I'd been quite ideological, and things are a lot more nuanced than I originally anticipated. So we'll get into that. So just from the ground up, you are what you eat. I don't feel like people really penetrate that truth deeply and contemplate it thoroughly. They just kind of take it for granted. I know I did. And the reason why I feel the need to speak on it is because I see such ignorance and just uneducated masses. For example, this probably like how old? 13 years old. He was relevant to me, this young lad. I see him about on the streets these days, with his brother about the same age. And he used to be relevant to me as he was like a sibling of someone I used to hang around with. And like I generally, when I see youth, like I do try and give them pointers. I like to think anyway that I have somewhat wisdom, as I just like wisdom and like the intellectual field and knowledge. So but I ask them, because I work in fast food at the minute. And I tell them, they're inquiring about fast food, and I'm like, but you don't really want to eat. You don't really want to eat from there, man. Like, it's bad for you, you know. Like, you got this one life, conventionally speaking. You don't really want to like eat this fast food. And he goes, well, I'm so skinny though. Like, what problem is it? Look how skinny I am. And it's like the issue. Like, people somewhat confuse health with body mass, muscle, fat, or slimness. Like, that's not the case. That's not really health. So it's just things like that. Me personally, I know I grew up on like crisps and things. Like I used to eat an absurd amount of crisps. And obviously the crisp has got all sorts of things like lots of vegetable oils and that, like rapeseed oil and that, which I know is very toxic. One important point about this, like lecturing to the youth about staying away from sugar and things, is like, so actualize.org, which I take a lot of inspiration from. Here's a video called "Burning Through Karma." The frame of this video was pursuing and going through with your desires before, like, instead of just meditating them away, basically, basically, like, instead of just like say like the Buddhism, you just like cut out all of this nuance and complexity, and you just kind of meditate. And if you have a desire, you just let it go. But Actualize's stance on this video is that there's perhaps wisdom in actually, in a mature, conscious manner, going to fulfill and kind of burn through the karma, so to speak, of this desire. So, say in for his example was he desires and craves deep romantic intimacy, and he feels that although he could just airy fairy meditate it away, he would. It's not something somewhat that he's willing to let slip through the cracks. Like, he'd rather pursue that desire at the same time as not fooling himself that that would bring him ultimate fulfillment and happiness. So that's the preface of that video. But the point that is relevant to what I'm saying here is that there was a quote, and I'll try and quote it best I can. He goes, "Maybe what the child doesn't need is a lecture from you about how bad sugar is and how it's going to rot their teeth and give them bad health and that. Maybe what the child really needs is like you need to recognize within the child the desire and somewhat let him go through the process of bumping his head on the ceilings, making the errors, making the failures, and then going through the learning process himself instead of just receiving a lecture from the outside." That's the end of the quote, somewhat. But yeah, I mean, another point is just like, so many people just don't heed the warnings anyway. Like, parents say so many warnings. I don't know if they just don't say it in a good manner. But like, it's like you have to almost learn from yourself in a lot of areas. So that's just one point about how it's more nuanced than just like simply like, don't eat that sugar. Like, it's a bit more like there's a process for each conscious being to kind of go through the process and make the mistakes and learn from themselves and have their own sort of conscious evolution. So that's a point worth noting. And then I mean, say some of my co-workers at the fast food, for example, we sell potato wedges. And he's like, they're healthy. It's potato, one of them. And like, again, I'm just talking about like the uneducated masses. Like, people are so quick to make assumptions. Like, an orange, it's healthy. It's an orange. It's like, it goes much deeper than that, because it's like, it's an orange from where? Is it genetically modified? Like, have they altered like the DNA of the actual structure of it? Have they sprayed it with pesticides? Obviously, because everything's the majority, like there's a one of the deepest things is like, and this is something I've been saying for a while now, is there's basically like a deep ridden pollution that flows through the ecosystem, I seem to have concluded. And that and Actualize.org has a video on how to shop for healthy food. It's over an hour long. I recommend you check that out. And what he states again is that it's like and even with the meat and the fruit or anything that's farmed, for the most part, it's like, obviously everything's for like really built on greed, like, and profit. So they're going to be using the cheapest water, and we know the tap water now is here in the Oxfordshire in the UK. I know, I'm absolutely confident it's got chlorine in it. I can actually smell the chlorine in it. I got out the shower the other day and I could smell the chlorine on my skin. And I'm pretty confident that chlorine is one of the leading causes of cancer. I've heard that a lot. I did research it again. I haven't, but I'm going a lot deeper with my. I don't just repeat things now. So go search that up for yourself. But I did I do remember verifying that from various sources on the internet, but I don't know who to believe or what sources to believe. Um, but I don't think you're supposed to ingest chlorine. That's for sure. And they do it to clean the water. And I'm not saying it's a big conspiracy, but also obviously they put fluoride in the tap water in many places. And like regardless of like I'm not making no radical claims, but on the bag of chlorine and on the bag of fluoride, it has fucking skulls with red fucking triangles saying like warning, don't let this touch your skin and shit like that. And there's a big renaissance in like the information revolution of just like the food matrix. I've seen a loads of channels popping up on YouTube now, talking about a lot of like the like again with the vegetable oils, and just and like how potentially big pharma and the food industry are like interconnected because obviously if the people are sick, then big pharma's making profit, pharmaceutical industries, and like again, I know they say like the Matrix. I mean, or and that kind of dovetails with Babylon or the grid of society. Like I don't know. Again, I'm not making no radical claims, but I know Jordan Peterson speaks on how like media, government, big pharma, education, and food somewhat they like seem to be interconnecting, and especially with the Great Reset and the World Health Organization, all the world leaders coming together. Um, like you do got to be wary about it. Don't got to be ideological about it, but so yeah, it's a lot more nuanced than it's simply it's potatoes, it's healthy. Like you want to aim for ultimately like whole foods in terms of. I know Hamza speaks on this. Well, I'm pretty confident Hamza said one of the main things, or to build, yeah, for like on his health video, he said like protein powder first thing in the morning. I don't know about that. But it's quite nuanced as well. Like there's people who are ideological about veganism, and then there's people who's ideological about carnivorism, carnivore, or whatever you want to call it. Uh, so really, it's best to just avoid ideology. But it's quite interesting how they clash because you end up not knowing who to believe. You have like people on each end of the spectrum, and they both seem to present just as valid evidence. And so, really, who do you believe? You don't believe anybody. Um, I've said in the past that I know that like Dr. Sebi and Dr. Robert Morse, I think, I know Dr. Sebi does. They claim that mucus is the cause of all disease. And I was all, I was all blocked up full of mucus till I started following Ebbet and Sebi. Now I'm feeling alright. I was blocked back then when my colon was way too heavy. That's Inspector Veg. He's a rapper. He's actually put a voice snippet of me. He's got a song called Get That Health, and I'm at the start. And I go, yeah, I'd love to learn more about your truth. I got a job in the co-op now, yeah. Literally every person buys the same shit. And yeah, I mean that's another thing. I used to work in retail and it's like literally every person is buying sugar and pus and like polluted food. Your food is polluted. Don't be deluded. I know you're not stupid. Go and grow your own food quick. That's Mr. Traumatic. Another one, Mr. Traumatic. Check these songs out. We've got Vegang by Mr. Traumatic, and we got Plant Based by Mr. Traumatic. Check them out. Very interesting, very powerful songs. And it's great because this is what's known as neurolinguistic programming, which is what I'm going to be getting into a lot more. I'm going to be doing a lot more creation in general, getting a lot more out there. And if I can make good lyrics, I want to kind of instill, you can like program someone's mind. That's how they do it kind of with the radio. You know when you get that awful song stuck in your head for days on end and it won't go away? That's neurolinguistic programming. When you're singing them lyrics you don't even like again and again and it's driving you crazy for days on end, that's neurolinguistic programming. It's all down to the radio and the media and the TV. It's all run by the same people. They're using neurolinguistic programming. Not making any claims. A quote by Traumatic on his song Programming is that when you're listening to radio and shit in all these warehouses and every car is fitted with it automatically, it's like you're getting subconsciously programmed. And I know that this is the case. Like I had a psychedelic experience recently, and it was quite a bad trip. And that's another important point. I've heard ayahuasca is actually very healthy and psilocybin mushrooms as well. We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, after I come out of the trip, I got completely shattered. And when I started picking up the pieces, I was just like pulling quotes from all these different conscious lyrics that I've listened to over many, many years. And it's like, and it's see how I start rapping randomly. It's because I've got like these catalogues of information from the lyrics that I listen to. Now I've got to be a bit more careful. I think like somewhat. I mean, overall, like I completely rate Mr. Traumatic, for example. I love his whole thing, but like I don't know if I 100% agree with the whole ideology. If like, so when you're getting neurolinguistically programmed, you got to make sure that who you're listening to is actually speaking facts. So yeah, a lot like everyone just buys the same thing when I was in this shop, and like I can't blame them because when I was at this shop, yeah, so when I was working at the co-op, I didn't have any transport, and this was the only local retail or grocery shop. Otherwise, you had to get the bus, and I was very poor at the time, and there wasn't really any buses anyway, very infrequent in that area. And I was confident, and I still am really, that 99% of the food in this shop is polluted. The only thing that is like not is like the organic honey, but even that is in the plastic bottle, and um and with the plastic bottle drinking water, I've heard I know Alex Sedlak claimed that every single bottled water brand has fluoride in it. Um, uh, so it's best I'm gonna invest in a water distiller as soon as I can. Uh, so yeah, it's difficult, and with the mucus as well that I have noticed. So like, another reason why I feel somewhat qualified to speak on it is because I haven't gone full blast fasting. Fasting is where you just deprive yourself of food, you push through the hunger. The most I'd done really was I'd done about 3 days on watermelon, just like one watermelon a day, just to keep hydrated because the bottled water just seems to go right through me. Uh, that's another thing is like the water, it doesn't really hydrate you a lot because your body doesn't really want it because of the miles of disgusting pipes it has to go through and the microplastics. uh, I I've referred to a study numerous times. I need to find its source as but I've definitely read somewhere that 11 out of 13 people have plastic in their blood. And the reason why it's important to speak on these things is because obviously we faced the pandemic from 2020 to 2022 for the most part, COVID, and this is why my approach is trying to be more sensible now, is to actually have people listen to me a bit more seriously instead of just ranting. Like, because when I discovered all this stuff originally, my mind was blown and I was having some full blown awakening in many different dimensions. So I felt lied to and I felt hurt. So I don't blame myself for being so frustrated at what I had learned because it was like everything I knew was a lie. I just was fed poison from day one. Uh, and I realize it seems like quite a deceitful world based on greed a lot. But again, we're going to get into more of the nuances of that shortly. Um, so yeah, it's like, yeah, there was a pandemic. I get it, but obviously, like, there are bugs in the air and shit. Yeah, sure, but it's like when all of our food is like, if when we spray our food with poison and then we eat it, like that's probably why we're getting sick. I'm not saying COVID doesn't exist. They're gonna have some robot read that bit now. He said COVID doesn't exist. Take him down. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that obviously we'd have a much better chance at withstanding it if we actually had an immune system. I know Wim Hof uh, come out with a video saying we can do a lot more about this pandemic than what we're being told, and I do truly believe that. But you're not actually allowed to disagree with the World Health Organization on YouTube because their terms of service are directly tied, like they've partnered up. Um, so it's very touchy, and obviously, if I'm too radical about my claims, then my platform to actually reach people will be diminished. Uh, so I think a more sensible, calm approach for the most part is the only way forward on this platform. Um, so there's that. With the fasting again. So yeah, so I done the melon fast, and I was so light in my body, so light, so energized. Like it's such a weird feeling after a few days, especially, and like your sleep is better. You just feel so much better because you eat like most people eat like 3 meals a day, and you're constantly having your digestive system working like, and it doesn't have a break, and that's a lot why you're always tired. Sugar is like obviously the refined sugars, the somewhat synthetic, where like obviously you have natural sugars, which is fine and necessary, but then there's well, there is absolutely no need to actually buy a bag of sugar. That should just be like, I know Inspector Veggie has like a 40-minute documentary where he walks around loads of shops, and I imitated him as well. I think on this channel, on my YouTube channel, where I just walk around Tesco, and I'm like, right here we got the starting our children on sugar, and it is true. And Inspector Veggie says, he goes to Coca-Cola. He said these companies should be permanently discredited, and here's where the nuance comes in. Alan Watts speaks about this somewhat. A quote that's kind of relevant by him is, better to have a life full of what you love doing than a short life full of what you love doing than a long life spent in a miserable way. Now, I don't think those are the only two options. He wasn't speaking about food in general, but he did have a bit about like bread or something. I'll have to find it again. And it's quite common with like you know how like it's a stereotype that Google tells you that everything is poison. Well, that's basically because it is. Like most Western modern food is polluted. So that's why Google is telling you that all your symptoms are something to be worried about. It's because they are. But hold on. So here's the main nuance, kind of, is so there's actually like a label. Surprise! There's another label created by the West for human behavior under some category of like dysfunctional behavior. Basically, if you care about health too much, I believe there's some sort of label or like kind of disorder for it. And it's weird. All the video titles are like copy paste. I can't remember what they call it exactly, but you can easily find it. You just search like people giving too much of a shit about their health, and it speaks about it as if it's a problem. Now, originally I was like, what are you on about? Like, there's plenty worse things to be obsessed about than your health. However, obviously, like with epigenetics, I know. What was that one tune? at the end of Mr. Traumatic's song Off Grid, uh, yeah, there's a quote from like a lecture or a speech. I don't know who's talking, but he says something like stress hormones physically shut off the immune system. Now it's time to wake up because our negative thinking is manifesting a negative life experience. So being fearful of the food is its own form of pollution and poison itself. So just like be careful about taking life too seriously. I got into a bit. So I was abusing psilocybin magic mushrooms. This was about. I mean, I've been doing it for fucking like well over a year now, and I haven't really stopped. I've slowed down a bit recently, but I got into a state where I was pretty confident that this was some extrasensory perception that I'd unlocked through psychedelic abuse, where all of a sudden I couldn't really drink water anymore because the only water I had access to was in a bottle or from the tap. And like, yeah. So like, I used to do live streams while on 7 grams of mushrooms. Uh, And there's actually a clip of me somewhere on one of the streams where I take a sip of the water while streaming, and it makes me gag. Uh, and I can say, I can taste the plastic and the pollution in it to the point where I can barely drink it, and it makes me just want to avoid the water. So I'm dehydrated, I'm thirsty, but the water's not really drinkable. What again? Because it doesn't really hydrate you, and it like so like becoming too conscious before you're ready of the polluted food, like I remember now, this is something I was thinking, is like I thought like originally I was helping everyone by saying everything's poison. But really what I might be doing is making people worry, make people feel bad about their choices, when is it really that serious? Alan Watts has a quote at the start of my Song Dem with me and Anon on my album Toxic from 2019. He says, this is my basic metaphysical axiom, shall I put it that way. The universe is basically playful. There's no necessity for it whatsoever. It doesn't go anywhere. That is to say, it doesn't have some destination that it ought to arrive at. And that's it. It's like I've been embodying a more of an Alan Watts approach in general, where it's like just don't take it so seriously because like yes, if you're gonna approach life with a holistic personal development stance, everyone wants their children to be successful. But with what? Just with money? Like to me, success is feeling good in my body and true understanding, and understanding can get hindered by poor diet and poor health. I think Hamza said in one of his videos, I'm not sure where the origin of this study was, but they supposedly they gave like modern Western food to like somewhat indigenous tribes, and it actually like lowered their intelligence. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. This food bogs you down. Yeah, so I was doing a like a 2 day long fast on grapes. They were GMO grapes, seedless from the co-op, so they weren't great, but they weren't great. But I felt incredibly light and very fresh and clean and open. And then someone offered me a mince pie at work, and because I'm just very agreeable, and this is like something I'm going to have to sort out because I'm just way too agreeable with everything. Uh, I just hate saying no, but that's not even necessarily for this. But this person offered me a mince pie, and I felt kind of awkward, and I was I was like, yeah, fuck it. But this was in the middle of a fast. You don't eat a mince pie in the middle of a fast. And as soon as I ate it, my energy levels fucking depleted immediately. Like, even though it had sugar and all this stuff in it, I ate this mince pie and I'm instantly heavy as fuck and bogged down. A lot of people in this workplace as well are perpetually ill. And this is the thing, it's like you haven't got to care and you haven't got to take life so seriously, but if it's actually causing you a lot of suffering and you lack the knowledge and you like it's just ignorance, because I used to be a victim to this ignorance. I wish I knew, because I want to live a good, like, I choose the ultimate holistic personal development, long-term, long lifespan path. I don't want to just indulge in pleasure and then die quickly. Like Alan Watts, he died of alcoholism, I believe, and it still fit his philosophy, and that's fine. Do what you please. So that's what I mean. I'm much more relaxed where it's like, you can do what you want. You can eat the shit food if you want to. That's why I'm somewhat, like, less ideological about just completely shutting off all the cigarettes and all the Coca-Cola. Even though I think the way that it's marketed is quite, I don't know, I don't think it's very good, because when I was working at the co-op, I could sell children of any age, 5 years old, a fucking massive bottle of Lucozade with no mediation, massive bottle of Coca-Cola containing aspartame and all sorts of stuff. And then there's the fake healthy food, Belvita, Eat Natural, and like just the general, like, granola bars and healthy and stuff. Like the granola cereal was meant to be healthy, but it's like it's basically a dessert for breakfast. And yeah, it's just very nuanced. Like, milk isn't just milk. Like, yeah, milk is healthy, but what milk? Where were the cows housed? Were the cows stressed? Were the cows fed tap water? Were they fed very cheap grains? Or what was the cow's diet? You know what I mean? It's like, did the cow have sunlight? Was it in a fucking warehouse? Was it next to a main road? Whatever, like breathing in shit all day? Or like, yeah, were they like machines with pollution and shit? So yeah, this is important to me because I wish to bring about health, because health is healing. And I know my family, people in my family, are going to run into health troubles in the future, and I've tried to warn them. But I'm not perfect at all. Inspector Veg said it took him 7 years to migrate from the shit diet his parents gave him to the new diet. Actualize.org started on the greasiest, saltiest, shitty food. Nothing comes quick, it takes ages, you're gonna go through many different phases. What doesn't kill you definitely makes you stronger. My pain turned me into a monster. Nothing worth having ever comes easy, so it doesn't matter even if it takes you longer. We were never born to be slaves. I'd do a drive fast for 3 days. You need to question everything and debate. I will humble you and make your ego deflate. So yeah, I recommend, I don't know, just do research. It's just what I say to people. It's just like, you've got this one life, conventionally speaking. So, like, indulging in these, like, bad foods and that, it's not that great. Like, it doesn't really, like, it's not that good. Like, last night, very, very one-off, I indulged in a whole fucking Ben & Jerry's ice cream and a fuck-off bar of chocolate. And it just, like, it's pleasurable, but, like, it's just gone straight away, and then you just feel like shit, and you're worse off every time, and it doesn't help you towards your vision at all. It decreases your development. And I remember when I come off the sugar for ages, I know Bespoke, who was a feature on Mr. Traumatic, he was saying on his Instagram story about, I tried to get him on the podcast as well, but he didn't want to come on, about how quitting sugar is like the maddest withdrawals ever. And like, they put sugar in like all of the food because sugar's like a drug. Like, you do get like a pleasurable, a pleasure spike from it. And they put it in the food somewhat, I believe, to keep you buying it more because you're hooked on it because it's a drug. And it's cheap. So just be very vigilant, because obviously people are trying to cut corners, sell you things for cheap. I know Key Parks has the same view. It's like they eat poison because it tastes good. And again, like, you can eat food for the practical purposes, which is personal development and health, or you can eat it for the taste, and that's completely up to you. But I wish people were more conscious about where is this leading, because when there's a whole pandemic, that my personal view and opinion, somewhat, and belief, is that it is a lot of it is deep rooted in our health and our diet, and I don't think you can really argue with that an awful lot, because most people's diet is really, really poor, and their health is really poor. So obviously, we're gonna have trouble withstanding uh, bacteria potentially if we're just very weak beings. We know that men are more feminine and weak than ever, supposedly. Like, this is kicking up a lot. Like, that strong times create weak men, create hard times create strong men, or whatever the fuck. And right now we're in the weak men part. As you can see, very, I don't know what the word feeble means, but it's like just like weak, non-masculine generation. Uh, so yeah, I don't know, but I think it's important to speak on these things. So yeah, I hope potentially you got something out of it. Let me know if you did. My name's OXSN, OXSN. I got many channels on YouTube. I'm on rumble.com as well. /lowercase user/uppercase OXSN. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on SoundCloud, I'm on Spotify, I'm on fucking everything. And I'm gonna be on a lot more in the future. So keep up with me, because anything that I believe is valuable wisdom, I'll be delivering to you. And I'm very radical with like psychedelics and spirituality, so I do believe that I'm gonna have this is really my core. I want to create and create and create and keep it, but really with a message and a purpose, because I don't know what else to do. I want to make an impact. There's a lot to say, and ideas can be dangerous, but they're like seeds. Well, I can plant these seeds of everything I said in this video in your mind, and then these can sprout and blossom, and potentially, I don't know how far this stuff can go. There are books that change the world. And not only will I be creating content like of this nature, but potentially more actual practical things of like trying to actually go in and like create like petitions and actually change laws and create like more like documents or like actual shit that we can uh like worksheets and things that I could potentially pass on to the viewers. And just like I really want to try and make like a really good something here, because I see so many people do it, and I just want to be a part of that. And I want to get up there and be somewhat more of a name, so I can have more connections with the people in this community, and see if we can form greater ideas and create shit from the ground up. Because there's a lot of shit that I've got in here that it does not exist out on this platform. So I feel it's my job, my duty, and my purpose to cultivate this and get the community entangled like a web, and see what I can do. So yeah, I'll be sharing all my life lessons and my journey on the spiritual path and everything in general, and just insights about life. And I'll be taking on a lot more practices of meditation, more psychedelics, going to the ayahuasca retreats and all that, doing a lot more personal contemplation, and making a lot more music, making a lot more rhymes for the neurolinguistic programming. And I've a recent psychedelic experience revealed to me that I wish to be a lot more creative. So I'm going to be putting a lot more time into just my creative process, and what you're seeing right here